Good day, everyone. Welcome and thank you so much for tuning in for the IoT Foundation launch webinar today. We have a packed session prepared for you, but before I hand it over to our expert speakers, some quick key information in case you're wondering. We are recording the session and the video will be made available later this week. The recording will also include a link to the slides that we're using today. Please feel free to ask questions. There is a question panel on the lower right section of your screen. We're planning a brief Q&A session at the end. For the agenda of today, we will introduce first the CCC before we go and do a deep dive into IoT and the IoT certification. With that being said, it's time for me to hand it over to today's speakers. Mark, Sudhakar, would you please introduce yourselves and start the session? Mark, you first, please.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's session as we look at the IoT. My name is Mark O'Loughlin, Managing Director of the Cloud Credential Council, the CCC, which is home of Digital Ready Professionals. And I'm joined by Sudhakar.
Yeah, hello everyone. Thank you, Mark and Laura, for having me on this webinar. I'm an expert trainer and an author associated with Cloud Credential Council for the past 7 years. I'm also the lead author for this particular course on IoT Foundation. And it's a very interesting course that will be going through some of the major facts and figures that we'll present in this webinar.
That's great, Sudhakar. Thank you so much. So again, hello everybody and welcome to today's session as we're looking at Internet of Things Foundation course from CCC. So the Cloud Credential Council supports individuals and organizations in their digital transformation journey by optimizing talents and developing skills for digital ready professionals. And we achieve this through the CCC Professional Certification Portfolio, which covers AI, cloud, big data, IoT, and blockchain. CCC certifications and overall portfolio are vendor neutral. So we are focused on developing digital ready professionals who can help organizations succeed in their digital ambitions. And now for this section, I'll hand over to Sudhakar, who's going to take us through a quick look at all things IoT. Sudhakar, over to you for a few moments.
Thank you so much, Mark. And welcome to this webinar again. The Internet of Things, or IoT, what it's commonly known as, is a digital technology revolution that is considered even bigger than the Industrial Revolution. It was in 1999 when Kevin Ashton first coined this term. He worked on this technology in the MIT lab. And there he started developing things related to IoT. Actually, when we have such smart or connected products, then there are opportunities which create enriched value propositions and growth. Just like other technologies, IoT also began as a hype. But make no mistake, it's a long-term and very powerful technology that industries and consumers, they will need to leverage in the future to achieve success. Remember Netflix? It more or less destroyed Blockbuster by using the internet to exchange DVDs and remove the concept of late fees. They converted the elements of a DVD into various bits and delivered their movies over broadband time and again. Today, you get more movies on demand and at lower costs. Similarly, if you have seen earlier, the analog photography industry ruled by the monopoly of Kodak, which never tried to change with its changing times, also has become bankrupt and out of the industry today. So an entire industry, the DVD rental business or analog photography, is consigned to the archive of history. And such disruptions will happen in every industry. So companies and their employees have to be prepared. So what is the Internet of Things? Many people are not clear about the term IoT. They associate IoT with simple sensors, smartphones, wearables, home automation, and so on. They are unclear about what is the actual benefit of connecting a thing or connecting, say, so many things to the internet. Let us understand this very important concept. When something is connected to the internet, that means it can send or receive information, or both. This ability to collect and send information on one hand and receive the same on the other and act on it makes things smart. An example is, say you want to see a movie on your smartphone. Now that movie is not stored on your phone. So through your smartphone, you send a request to, say, Netflix or YouTube or any specific channel, and then you receive that information of the movie which you can watch. Another example we can relate to is a farm. In a farm, you have sensors which are present to measure the soil temperature and moisture. And they can turn on the irrigation system to the sufficient level when desired. No farmer as such is required. If the irrigation system itself is in addition smart, that it can detect the weather condition through its internet connection, it need not even water on the days it's likely to rain. So in simple terms, the Internet of Things, or IoT, is a network of physical objects that communicate with each other without human interaction. So as depicted on this slide, we say it connects physical objects and devices to the internet. It consists of sensors, actuators, microcontrollers, which can communicate, collect, and exchange data with one another. These connections can be totally either wired or wireless. Data from the sensors can be processed in one of three important locations, either at the edge, the fog, or the cloud. And data analytics is normally performed and decision-making information is derived. Estimates suggest that more than 75 billion IoT devices will be connected and in use by 2025. Every year, the rate of adoption is increasing across manufacturers, service providers, vendors, consumers, and integrators. As 5G is now a reality, we have billions of humans and trillions of machines taking advantage of enhanced mobile broadband for a wide range of applications, from emergency sense services to virtual reality. Of course, IoT has its share of challenges also in security, privacy, non-standardization, proliferation of network protocols, and so on. This is a quick overview of the IoT things and network layers. Examples range from smartphones, wearables, vehicles, buildings, and even animals. The networks involved range from simple Bluetooth, RFID, Wi-Fi to the 4G, 5G, Zigbee, cellular, and satellite technologies. It's very important to have a very good IoT network to gain the optimized benefit. And so key requirements we normally look for in a good IoT network should be ultra low power consumption, low to moderate data rates, reasonable and scalable range, low complexity and cost for small form factors, and large number of reliably connected devices on co-located networks. Choosing the right wireless connectivity technology for an IoT application can be challenging, as there are various standards deployed in the market today, spreading over multiple frequency bands and using different communication protocols. The TCP/IP protocol, which is the heart of the traditional web technologies, such as the internet, is not suitable for IoT devices because of its huge overhead and less optimization. We have another similar protocol called the user datagram protocol, or UDP, which is more suitable. And in addition, we have other effective protocols for IoT communication. Machine to machine, or M2M, is all about a device that captures an event and transmits the event over the network. It is a subset of IoT, which in turn is a subset of the Internet of Everything, or IoE for short. The IoT is all about things that are smart and connected, while IoE is about people, process, data, and things. IoT connects people to the internet for very valuable communications. Examples can include implantable as well as external wearable medical devices. A process deals about delivering the right information to the right recipient, be it a human or a machine, at the right time. Data collection and analysis helps in effective decision making. And things are those that are smart and get connected to one another and are able to exchange data that can be later on converted into effective decision-making information. Let us delve into the top technological drivers of IoT. Cheap sensors. Sensor prices, if you notice, have dropped considerably over the last 10 years or the decade. Similarly, cost of bandwidth has declined over 40% in the last 10 years. Processing power has increased, but costs have declined 60% in this same time period of a decade. Due to the advent of new chips such as the tensor and neural processing units, we now see a huge amount of increased computing power for complex data analytics. New and cheap connectivity options such as Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, which are very cost-effective and scalable. Increase in the use of the IPv6 protocol, the newest IP protocol that is designed to replace IPv4. Some of the enabling drivers of IoT are smartphones, which consists of sensors and actuators. They act as the personal gateway of IoT, serving as a remote control or hub for the connected home, car, health, and fitness devices. You have cloud, fog, or the edge types of computing, where you can quickly and accurately process the enormous volume of data that is generated by IoT sensors. In addition, the cloud also acts as a huge storage facility. Big data, whether structured, unstructured, semi-structured, real-time, or batch, analytics helps in extracting meaningful and valuable information. Artificial intelligence and machine learning models and algorithms, which are today much more powerful and advanced, can be used in healthcare and industries, manufacturing, where productivity and predictive maintenance are a key factor. We also have a set of emerging technologies such as blockchain, robotic process automation, digital twins, 3D printing, quantum computing, 5G, etc., that interact and add to the value proposition of IoT. This slide lists some of the top IoT use cases, such as sensors, which are used in, say, farm machinery, help in controlling soil temperature, moisture, and pests. Buildings that are able to operate at peak efficiency. Communities that can make use of parking spaces, intelligent traffic systems, weather adaptive lighting systems, and so on. Healthcare uses baby monitors, smart diapers, pills with ingestible sensors. Manufacturing industries can use IoT to improve operations, product quality, and decrease health hazards. Smartphones control everything from door locks, thermostats, light bulbs, vacuum cleaners. Utilities can use smart water meters, which help to avoid water leaks. Smart electric grids can adjust rates that depend on the usage. Wearables such as smart watches, fitness trackers, health monitors, and the like. So practically in every area in industry sector, we can see a widespread adoption of IoT. Examples of some real-life use cases. Amazon increases its shipping capacity by engaging Wi-Fi robots that can scan QR codes on its products and track its order. The robots locate shelves of products and bring them to workers rather than have employees go to the shelves and look for products. ABB embraces the concept of predictive maintenance. It uses connected sensors to monitor its robots' maintenance needs and trigger repairs before any parts break. Assembling a commercial jetliner requires millions of components and tens of thousands of assembly steps. And to tackle this complexity, Airbus launched a digital manufacturing initiative known as the Factory of the Future. This initiative focuses on streamlining operations and bolsters production capacity. Heavy equipment manufacturer Caterpillar uses IoT and augmented reality apps to give machine operators an at-a-glance view of everything from fuel levels to when air filters need replacement. If an old filter expires, the company sends basic instructions for how to replace it via an augmented reality app. Fitbit wearables communicate data through sensors and offer the most precise information such as health metrics. And finally, John Deere provides self-driving tractors, intelligent farming solutions, and sensors that constantly monitor crop levels and soil health. This course is a comprehensive guide for learners to understand the fundamental concepts, terminologies, architectures, benefits, challenges, the use cases, and the future of IoT. So thank you all for listening to this part of the webinar, and over to you, Mark.
Thank you so much, Sudhakar. It's interesting to see on some of those IoT use cases, electric toothbrush, but it makes sense to automatically reorder brush heads, which is a key thing, but also shares brushing habits with your dentist, which may tell you something that you don't know. I mean, something as simple as that. The driverless tractor, which probably would have been a nightmare for the farming community years ago, is such a reality today. It's phenomenal. And I think one big use case that I've seen during the pandemic, which is actually changing not only the industry, but it's had to change people's mindsets first of all for it to take off, is the development of medical care using IoT devices. And one thing in particular, it seems so simple when you think about it, took a bit of time to change, but it's so fundamentally required. And I think it's going to be so important going forward, is the use case where to try and keep people out of hospital during the pandemic until such time they need oxygen support. There's a cohort of people around the globe wearing those little finger oxygen monitors. And what some companies have done is put IoT sensors in that when oxygen drops to a dangerous level, which can happen quickly, support is immediately sent to that person It could be a doctor, it could be an ambulance, it could be just a medical person on a bike, to get them oxygen straight away and into a support system straight away. So you're only putting in people when they need it in real time, and then able to leave everybody else with confidence in their own homes, with them being confident that if I have a medical emergency, intervention will be told immediately and something will happen that will get me where I need to go. And it's all done automatically, it's all done with IoT, it's all secure. And from the consumer perspective, they're wearing a little oxygen sensor on their finger all day. That's it. A lot of effort and technology gone in behind all of that. But what that's been doing is freeing up medical facilities so that only people that need that treatment are in the facilities, and those that don't need it at that time are not. And it's allowing people through and allowing increased success rates in dealing with this pandemic. I think that was a really good use case we've seen in the last 12 months, and we'll see a lot more. And all of this means, there's new, Sudhakar mentioned there in one of the slides, it's on one of the slides, that there's new careers that we haven't even dreamed up of yet as a result of IoT. So this is, I think, it's a new area. IoT is a developing industry. While sensors have been around for many, many years in commercial and consumer settings, we're now seeing the growth of cloud-enabled intelligence sensors and actuators driving new ideas, driving new opportunities, and driving new customer experiences. And I think an additional product from IoT is this wealth of data and information which IoT devices can collect, that leads us into the world of AI, big data, analytics, data scientists, all this kind of stuff as well. So IoT doesn't exist in isolation. It is one part of a bigger solution. And I think IoT services today, as Sudhakar was showing, they're built on cloud and digital services, which makes IoT more accessible and easier to use than at any other time in the past. And I think it's easier, quicker, and cheaper to get access to IoT resources from the physical resources, and to start using IoT solutions. And very similar to where artificial intelligence is today, IoT is another growth industry, both for business opportunity and for career opportunity. And those career opportunities exist in the tech sector, obviously, and in the non-tech sector. And it's clear that IoT, Internet of Things, and the Internet of Everything roles in this space will only be on the increase. Basically, as organizations examine their use of IoT solutions and services, they're going to need skills and expertise to help them make sense of it all today. Okay, so before we even think about what are the solutions we're going to do with IoT, is back to those questions. What is IoT? Why is it relevant to us? What could we be doing with it? How do we then start thinking about that? Organizations will need skills in basics and foundations in order to make sense of it all. Some popular roles, again, it's not limited to this, but web development engineer, software development engineer, architect, business and product developer, as well as IoT specialists, and IoT specialists on a technical side and a business side, and a blend of both. So with IoT, organizations will need the expertise in the technical side of IoT. They'll need expertise in the business side of IoT. So we need to have technical IoT specialists, business IoT specialists, and those with that unique blend that can understand what the business wants and translate that into some of the technical elements. But I think there is a shortfall in IoT specialists today that have that level of skill, which is good because it makes it an in-demand job area, and a career area that's going to be in demand. And Sudhakar, a question for you from your experience. Sudhakar, would you agree that there is a significant shortfall in IoT experts globally today?
Yeah, definitely. The reason being that IoT, the challenge is with the standardization. There are no standards, and
Yes.
there's a lot of technologies that are available in communications, networking, and it's very difficult to keep evaluating many of them and trying to find out which is the best solution for their particular organization.
Yes, yes, indeed. So thanks for that. So there is this big shortfall there. So if you can understand, I guess, the basics of IoT and understand what solutions can help, address what an organization might want to do or achieve with IoT, I think that's a critical skill to have. And I would suggest a most sought after skill for organizations, because IoT is just going to grow. It's an absolute growth market for what it can do and what it can achieve, and for the new businesses and business opportunities it can bring. And IoT continues to feature heavily in the news. There's always something about IoT in the news these days. As you can see, IoT remains a growth market, and it will continue to be, I think, a significant growth market for years to come, whether it be finance, public sector and government, banking, telco, pharma, even the health industry, which I mentioned earlier on about those sensors. IoT suits all verticals. Internet of Things suits all sectors and all global markets. And the key, I think, is finding a problem to which IoT can address, or finding an opportunity which IoT can exploit. That's what businesses will be interested in today. You looking at IoT and asking the question, how can IoT address a customer problem that we have today or a business problem? Or what is the opportunity which IoT can present us and which we can exploit? And that's why, again, having the basic understanding of what IoT is, having some of the technical understanding, some of the business understanding is really, really vital skill to have. So not only are the IoT skills critical, other things like security and security competence is an absolute requirement when it comes to IoT. Sudhakar, I mentioned security there. You've mentioned as well. A quick question: is security still often overlooked as an aspect of IoT design and operation?
True. The reason being manufacturers are in a hurry to release their products, and they don't consider to design security from the start. They first bring up their products, and then an afterthought, the security principles are then dealt with. So yes, security, and more importantly, privacy today of individuals, of the organizations, is a very important challenge in IoT.
So it is, and I think a great skill to have in an organization is the ability to challenge organizations with their product deadlines and say, we need to get security right from the start, because if we don't, here's what's going to happen. Here's what is likely to happen. And there are lots of case studies of security challenges and IoTs. And I think it's an afterthought. And secondly, I think, Sudhakar, would you agree as well that sometimes the cheaper security chips are the ones that are selected and put into sensors just because they're that little bit cheaper, especially in mass and consumer products. But
exactly.
It's a false economy, because I think if you have a data breach or a privacy issue, that's going to cost you multiple times of what you saved on those cheap chips. Will that be a fair assessment?
Yeah, true. Very, very true. Yes.
Yeah. So be very careful with that. And that's why Sudhakar earlier said, IoT does not exist in isolation. You've got all these enabling technologies and everything else built around it. So you do have to think about slightly bigger picture when it comes to IoT. And certainly do not be in the news with an IoT security or data breach or privacy issue. There should be no reason for that. It does happen, but try and design with that from the start would be a good approach. And we cover areas like that within the foundation course. So on a recent CCC Talks podcast, I spoke with Alessandro Bassi, who is another expert in the field of IoT. And Alessandro gave us 3 excellent steps, I think, to consider before, a big word there, before implementing any IoT solution or service. Number 1, fully understand the problem they want to resolve and how IoT can be the answer. Number 2, reflect on what is needed both on the back end and front end. And like I was just saying to Sudhakar there, even that includes things like security, privacy, data. Absolutely. And 3, address the issue of scale. Now, number 1 is just so important when it comes to IoT. What is the problem and how is IT the solution? And Sudhakar, in your experience, are companies asking that, or are they just trying to do something with IoT because they have investment and later on they're then faced with, well, actually, what is this thing doing?
I mean, earlier this particular curve did exist. People just wanted to get into IoT and started developing things without understanding the problem in the first place. But learning the lessons today, many organizations have come to understand that there has to be a goal, a business case, and definitely understand the problem and how IoT can benefit that particular organization.
Great, great. So there is some learning there anyway from previous, let's say, investments or possibly failures along the way. Yeah, so I think it's what's the problem to address or what's the business opportunity to exploit? Because I think far too many organizations fail to consider that step, as Sudhakar was saying, and instead see IoT as a solution to their revenue growth ambitions, and then later on face the challenge. Number 2, what do you need to achieve the IoT solution? And this includes what skills do you have available in-house? What technical and business related IoT skills do you have to, have success with your IoT endeavors? I think some really good advice there from Alessandro for us all to consider. Next slide.
Yeah, just a minute, Mark. I just would like to add on this.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah. Can you just go back to the slide, please? In the second point, I would also mention that processing the data, where exactly the data is required to be processed. So today, driverless cars, you have all these driverless, and so they have to be processed immediately, instantly, in real time. And that is where we look at edge computing, or we can then look at other layers where fog computing or network gateways are involved. If not, if the time essence is not of that importance, we can always go back to the cloud and get the analytics and processing done
there. That's so interesting. Yes, especially as you said, with say real-time driving, you need real-time processing at the point of where the action is happening, as opposed to having latency along the way, and that is just so vital. And then how do organizations get that capability, even scale it on mass as well? Okay. So it's an interesting area. It's a growth area. Actually, it's interesting, Sudhakar, because I guess all the answers are not available today. It's
true.
It's still, I think that's important for organizations to remember. They're still learning, and they're learning from the industry, they're learning from themselves, they're learning from their own mistakes, they're learning from their successes, they're learning from vendors. Vendors are learning from what customers are doing. There's no single answer that works. There's case studies of things that have done. So it's interesting that maybe organizations shouldn't be too hung up on what is the absolute answer is, as opposed to finding out what they need to work and then making that happen. Would that be a fair enough statement?
Very true.
Okay, interesting time. So we'll move forward. Now some details regarding the CCC Internet of Things Foundation certificate. And the CCC IoT Foundation provides critical knowledge and understanding of the basics of IoT, Internet of Things, and even Internet of Everything from a business perspective. The IoT Foundation builds upon definitions, concepts, and the application of IoT. CCC IoT Foundation develops a base level understanding of IoT terminology and associated business perspectives, and is very suitable to a very wide audience. There's online, self-paced, self-learning experiences are most popular at the moment, There's again classroom options available, but due to the current global situation, it's expected to be limited anyway. But we're talking today about the Internet of Foundation self-learning and online course that is now available. And critical areas and learning outcomes from the IoT Foundation include understanding the fundamental concepts and evolution and types of IoT. I think that's so important to get an understanding of what IoT is today. List IoT key drivers and the business perspective, including monetization models. How do you expect to make money from this? The key drivers is vital. The business perspective. Why are we doing IoT? Why are we investing money? What do we expect? What problem are we solving? Or what business opportunity can we exploit? Getting that mentality and understanding the architecture and basic building blocks of IoT. Remember, as Sudhakar said, IoT does not exist in isolation. So we need to understand those basic building blocks, looking at various communication and network connectivity protocols of IoT. As Sudhakar says, does TCP/IP work? Does UDP work? Latency and things like that are so important. Critical to identify security issues, data privacy issues, privacy, along with mitigation measures and best practices in the area of security, and looking at IoT case studies and future growth opportunities. And the Internet of Things is related, and its related technology is enhancing many businesses and consumer experiences. Many businesses are having great successes with that. And also even just from wearables, consumables, our own personal experiences are being rapidly enhanced by IoT. So it's important to understand why IoT can make a difference, and then how to achieve the optimal IoT solutions. And some good IoT strategies to consider regarding your Internet of Things initiative, and even how IoT might accelerate your career includes, skilling up, keeping pace with developments in technology, which I think we have to do anyway. Understanding the impact of IoT for your industry before others do, getting that lead competitive advantage. Assess if IoT can add value to your organization. I think for any organization, the answer is yes. The challenge is understanding how IoT can add that value. And also earn a credible and career-enhancing certification from the CCC. And now we have a few words from Irma on how to get started on the CCC IoT Foundation course. So over to you, Irma.
Thank you so much, Mark. Thank you also, Sudhakar, for your input. As Mark already mentioned it, and I think it makes sense to highlight how to get access to the certification. There are two ways that you can prepare for the exam. First is to purchase the material through your training provider. CCC has training partners all over the world, and the full list is accessible on the CCC website. Actually, we'll make sure to include the link in the email with the webinar recording. And second is to access the e-learning directly through the CCC website. Similarly, we'll add a link to the email that you'll receive later this week. And that brings us to the end of the session. We also have a little bit of time left for some questions. So let me see, here we go. What are actually the underlying risks that are associated with implementing IoT in an early stage organization?
I'll throw one out, and then maybe Sudhakar. Well, one big risk, I guess, is the fear of getting it wrong. The fear of wasting an investment, I think, is a big risk that are holding some organizations back. But they should think about it differently. It's an investment area. It's an opportunity to, try and solve a problem or gain some competitive advantage. And like that, there's an element of some unknown. So I think we should take away the fear, understand, and to try and take away the fear, so understand and have a team that has the basics of what IoT is, what it could do, and how to think about IoT. and to have a little framework around about that. Of course, like the foundation course here would be quite good for a team to try and take away that fear of failure and try and promote a team of innovation to try and move forward. And let them look at it, gives them some control, gives them some access, gives them some funding, let them try different things, try fail fast in small batches, you know, and try and experiment. So things like that might help take away the fear aspect, at least. And Sudhakar, I'm sure there's a few other areas that you could think of.
Yeah, one other area would be not understanding the technology or the problem itself of the organization and how IoT can possibly impact. So trying to work on the technology aspects, understanding the real clear roles of IoT with other technologies and how it should be able to bring benefits to both the business and the technical side is a very vital factor.
Yeah, I think that is. And then, notwithstanding, we mentioned some challenges earlier on. Security is an absolute massive challenge that you need to address, as Sudhakar said, from the start. You've got to be thinking about security from the start, from the chips you use, from the protocols you put in, from even privacy, what all of this means with the data, where it's stored, where it goes, what you do with it, what consent you get to do with it. How long you keep it. It's beyond and beyond just the technology these days. You have to think about that whole end to end early in your thought process about IoT, because if you don't, it's going to come at you later on, and you really don't want to be dealing with it then, especially if something goes wrong.
Yeah.
Well, one other thing I would just like to add here is that for consumer devices, wearables, what manufacturers tend to do wrongly is that they start with identifying sensors first and then building upon the processors and then the storage gateways and the applications. And it is there that many of them fail because it limits you to how many applications you can work with those particular sensors. The actual way to go around is to start with the customer, understand the application required for him for his benefit, and then work backwards towards the sensor, which would be much successful in getting the IoT system right.
Yes, that's fantastic advice, Sudhakar. I think that's really good advice from the field as to what's happening at the moment.
Thank you. I think I might be able to fit one last little question here. I think someone's already really interested in this certification. So what type of follow-up certification should I aim for after the IoT Foundation course?
Well, then you can go for a professional level. We still do not have a professional level certification, but there is a specialist. There are different fields that you can look at: IoT security or IoT data analytics and IoT with AI and machine learning engineer and so on.
Yeah, it can be very broad. I don't think it's a case of what can I do after this, going up a scale. Think about going more broad, because as Sudhakar says, IoT doesn't live in isolation. Because with IoT, you're going to gather huge amounts of data. That has me think about, data analytics, big data. Then there's the element of how do you cleverly understand some of that stuff and what IoT is doing. There's artificial intelligence, which can be baked in. Then there's elements of all of this. All of those three are built on cloud. So there's some cloud. So rather than maybe what's my next evolution in the IoT space, it's more a broader view of how do I develop in this digital space where IoT is one component of lots of other components that are all connected to achieve what we're trying to achieve. So maybe that's another way to look at it too.
All right. Thank you very much again. So that's all the time we have for today. There are more questions, but we will make sure to answer to them via email. Thanks again, Mark. Thanks to you, Sudhakar, for your input and for this webinar about the IoT Foundation course. I guess we'll see each other soon.
We will indeed, Irma. Thank you. And Sudhakar, thank you so much for joining us and sharing that with us today.
Yeah, thank you, Mark, for your valuable contributions and your insights, as well as thank you, Irma. Thank you, Joey.
Thank you, everybody.